Okay, so we are back to Mishlei. We're up to 1313. And this is in some ways a straightforward one, in some ways a multifaceted one. And I only know about this in advance. I mentioned that this came up in a lot of the commentaries in my Pirkei Avos shiur, but we didn't really touch it there. So hopefully we'll have a fresh look. Okay, Baz ledavar yechavel lo v'yirei mitzvah hu yishulam. Okay, so who wants to try translating?
One who is scornful to a matter will
Yeah,
be
one
injured through
who is
it.
scornful of a davar, and so one translation of davar is matter, will be injured through it. Okay. Um, and v'yirei mitzvah hu yeshulam.
But one who fears the command will be recompensed.
Ooh, recompensed. Okay. One of your command will be okay. I'm gonna go ahead and also have this in what do you call it? In transliterated form. So recompensed. Yeah, okay, fine. Okay, so we got a couple ambiguous terms here. So one who is scornful of a davar. Okay, davar is a matter, or what are some other translations for davar that are acceptable here?
A
Word,
word,
Word.
speech,
Yeah, okay. Saying, I guess, right? A statement. And one more. I mean, arguably this is included in matter, but let's just say thing. Okay, will be injured. Let's say by it. Yeah. Okay. So we have, okay. So there's two words here as well. Okay. So we'll be injured by it. There's another meaning of chaval, which is to bind or to pledge. Okay. So you could translate it. Let's see if they have a good one here. Will become pledged to it. Oh, so this dictionary translates our pasuk as become pledged to it. Okay. So we become injured by it, or actually, I'm going to go ahead and do this. Will ye yechavel lo. So will be injured by it, okay, or be pledged to it. The one who fears, and then there's another translation for yare that is similar to fearing but slightly different.
like observe, like to listen to.
No, not
In
for
the
that.
context,
Yeah, there's another one like when you translate Yiras Hashem, either fear of Hashem or
awe,
yeah. So I'm gonna go ahead and say reveres. Okay, just because that's easier to put into a verb. Okay, will be recompensed, and then Yeshulam could also be translated as in a different way as well. At least one more way, if not more.
made whole or
Yeah,
complete.
made whole. Okay, made whole, or I guess you could say one more. Shalom, made peaceful. Okay, yeah. Okay, so this is one of these like uh okay, so yeah, I guess we haven't come up with a nickname for this kind of pasuk. Let's call this one a slot machine pasuk, okay? Because like each of the terms can be like rotated to like mix and match the different combos here. Okay, okay. So we have one who's scornful of a matter, word, or thing. Actually, I'm going to get rid of the thing. Actually, I'm going to get rid of the matter. Actually, thing is more general than matter. One who is scornful of a thing, word, or statement will yechavel lo, sorry, this should say lo, will be injured by it or pledged to it. One who fears or reveres a command will be yeshulam, will be recompensed or made whole or peaceful. Now let's see what the minimalist commentators have to say here. So Mitzudas Tzion says yechavel is milashon chavala umaka. Okay, so that's injury or wounding. Okay, that's like the way Yaakov translated it. Okay, so we're good there. Sadigon translates it as Yechava is Yismashkin, which means to become pledged to. Hakavana Yihi Zakuklo means he will become like dependent on it, okay, or like needed by it. I forgot to look up the Targum ahead of time. Targum says Devazi al milsa niskabel mina udedacha mipukdana mishtalam tavasa. Okay, so he takes it as will be recompensed with good. And then Malbim says Yechabel is Minyan Hashkasa is destruction or wounding. Okay, good. Our scroll says he who scorns a word will cause himself injury, but he who reveres a commandment will be rewarded. Okay, that's included in ours. The Targum Hashivim, or the translation of the Targum Hashivim, that's the Greek translation, says, "He that slights a matter shall be slighted of it." That's strange. But he that fears the commandment has health of the soul. Okay, I guess they're going with the made intact, but I don't know where they're getting that from. Okay, I'm going to ignore that. Also, Aldrich says, "Who scorns a word will be hurt, but who fears a command is rewarded." Okay, I think we have enough in our translation here. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste this into the chat just so people can have access to it. And let's go with the questions. What are the questions here?
What thing, word, or thing is talking?
Yeah. Okay. So what is so? Let's put it this way. Okay. According to whichever translation of davar you go with, what is it referring to? Yeah. Okay. Adea.
So in the first half, it's talking about things, and the second half, it's talking about like mitzvos
Right.
or commandments.
Okay.
So, like, how are they related to each
Okay, so
other?
what is the relationship between the two halves? And especially given the fact that that the first half talks about davar and the second half talks about mitzvah. Okay, and this is not a spoiler, but it's not going to surprise you that many commentators learn davar here to refer to a mitzvah matter, because that's the easiest solution, but there's definitely different ways to take it. Yeah, Ayala?
Okay, so according to either translation of Yechavel,
Yeah.
how exactly will he be injured by it or
Okay.
pledged to it?
So according to either translation of Yechavel lo, how will he be injured or pledged by the thing? Yeah, Isaiah. Oh, or David.
Yeah. Okay. I didn't see what Rav Sadio Gaon said on this. Could this be like a yesh pasuk where this is not a necessary thing that happens all the time?
Okay, so he did not say that, but that's a valid question. So what David is referring to is we know that there's this. We've been over this, recently, I think, but I'll go over it again. Is that all the pasukim in Mishlei, or not all, many pasukim in Mishlei are stated as though they are stating universals that always happen. But Sadigon says you have to ask yourself, is it stating this in a general way because it always happens, or is it stating it in a general way, but sometimes it happens, or is it stating it in a general way, but this is a specific scenario? Okay, so let's divide this into two questions. Okay, what I guess is this talking about a specific scenario? And if so, what is that? What is it, and how do we know? And then the other question is to what extent is this always the case? Okay. Is this a like universal law or an exceptional case? Yeah, Charlotte.
It's really something minor, and maybe I'm making a mistake, but shouldn't it be translated as and one instead of but one?
Oh, okay, so it's not a mistake, but it is a Mishlei methodology thing, which is that all Mishlei psukim that have two halves are divided by an and the and is always up for interpretation. That sometimes you interpret it as opposites, and sometimes you interpret it as just two separate things. So what I used to do is I used to write it with but/and, but that got too aesthetically displeasing. So so what I do now, my own personal practice is when it seems like one half is bad and the other half is good, then I use but because it's opposites, but it doesn't have to be translated that way. So I am gonna go with but here, but there are other psukim, for example. I'm just trying to think if we had one recently. There are other psukim where you really could learn it as both ways, and so like it's one of those cases of like the built-in ambiguity, that he's intentionally like writing it so they could read it both ways. So it's a valid question, but we'll assume but for now. Yeah.
Okay. I do have something else that I
Sure.
noticed with pasuk. It seems like there's a consequence for speaking bad the first half. And actually, no.
Okay, well, you're raising a good question, which is
was gonna say there isn't one in the second half, but there is that they become shalom.
Okay. Right. So there's a consequence and benefit, but you did say something which is which I'm going to convert into a question, which is when it says scornful, okay, is this in like in speech, in action, or even in one's thoughts? Okay. Because buzz could just be a feeling that you have, or it could be like verbally scorning, or it could be like, disrespecting. Like we talk about like being mavaze talmid chachamim, like publicly shaming, or disrespecting chachamim. So yeah. Okay, next is my dad.
So the second half of the pasuk, that's not the way mitzvot work.
Okay.
When you do a mitzvah, it's not, I'm doing this so I should get a payoff for it. You do it because you're commanded to do it.
Yeah.
And not because some payoff is going to appear.
Okay, so let's figure out how we want to ask this question, because I feel like we could ask this in maybe multiple questions. Let's start off with saying the relationship. Okay, so I guess let's put it this way. If Yeshulam means will be rewarded, then this pasuk seems to be depicting the relationship between mitzvos and reward in a rather simplistic manner. Okay, like, is the reward always so forthcoming? And that's a rhetorical question, because we know that, like, I think my dad's right. It's like mitzvos we're not assured instantaneous reward, and this makes it sound like that. And in fact, there's an opinion in the Gemara that says skar mitzvah b'hai al maleka, that there is no reward for mitzvahs in this world, and all of the reward is in the next world. So like it's not so clear that like you just like, it makes it sound like you just get paid. And if you're going to say that you don't interpret it that way, so then what about the first half? That you're going to be wounded or injured. So like, is that a guarantee or not? So that kind of gets back to David's question as well about like how often does this happen? There's another way I was going to take the question. Yeah.
I just interject with one more thing.
Sure.
I mean, I also know we even say to the like fully to the opposite extent that if you do mitzvah, like that you're supposed to not do mitzvah because of the reward, and that's like actually a bad thing to do.
Okay, right. Okay,
Taking that one step further.
let's ask that as well, which is, and if this, I guess, and like, however we understand this, should reward be our motive? Okay, I'm going to do the question mark exclamation point to show that this is a rhetorical question. Okay, next is my mom.
Wait, hold on one second. I think you may have answered it 2 answers ago, but I was curious about scornful, if there's any other definition or connotation.
Yeah, so let me actually, I just didn't ask it directly. What is the definition of being scornful? And then I'll clarify, is this in speech, action, or I think speech, action, or thoughts I think covers it all, but we still need to know what it is. Okay, Isaiah, David.
Yeah, what form does the fear take? Is it fearing just internally, or does it have an external?
Okay, good. Where are we? Let's go over here, which is what does fear or revere mean in this context? Is this in speech, action, or thoughts, feelings? Yeah. Okay, Ariel.
Yeah, what does what does dover mean here? Because okay, actually that's not my question. My question is, what kind of a dover is it? Is it like like a neutral statement, or does it depend what the dover actually is?
Okay, yeah. I'll tack that onto question number 3, which is this a neutral davar or a good davar or a bad davar? That covers it. Yeah.
And
okay, good. Yeah.
And on the other side is when we say scornful, meaning is it similar? Is it equivalent to ignoring the dover, or is scorning it like actively doing something on the dover?
Okay, yeah. So I would include that in our question about what's the definition of being scornful, but I'll add, like, is this person actively doing something to the davar, or just neglecting to act or like to respond properly to the davar. Yeah. Okay, Charlotte.
It could be not a relevant question, and I'm just not familiar with the way you run the class, but why are we asking like machshava questions, like deeper thought questions about the pasuk? Like almost I want to use the word hashkafa, like when someone asked, I don't remember who, whatever question it was, of like
About the reward.
that's not the way we review mitzvot and rewards. Like
Right.
that, why are we asking those type of questions is my question.
Okay, so I the way that I run the class is we tend to list every question that people have. So that's the way I do it. But I would say I would agree with you that that question that was asked about like I would differentiate between, okay, there are questions that come from the pasuk, and then there are questions that come from outside of the pasuk. And whenever I used to learn Mishlei with my Mishlei Rebbe, Rabbi Moskowitz, then he would often like discourage me from asking questions from outside of the pasuk, walking in with other premises and say like, analyze the pasuk, and then if we emerge with a problem, then we'll deal with the problem afterwards, and I think that that's a fair approach. Like take the pasuk on its own terms. However, at the same time, Shlomo HaMelech is writing for an audience that is familiar with Torah. So any premises that you would walk in with from Torah are technically speaking fair game. And Shlomo's role is to to expand upon what the Torah gives us or to make it more accessible. But he is assuming like an audience that's familiar with the Torah's teachings. So I guess the question is like, is that a fair teaching to take into account? That we shouldn't be doing mitzvahs for reward. On the one hand, that's true according to the Torah Sheba'al Peh, that that we have a mitzvah lishma for its own sake and a mitzvah shelo lishma not for its own sake, and we say that you should mitzvahs not for their own sake are lower level. On the other hand, if you look at the Torah itself, the Torah says do mitzvahs and I'll give you rain at its proper time, and that seems to be encouraging reward. So I would agree with you that the question is not necessarily on par with the other questions. It's a different type of question. But our practice is to record all of them.
I think
Yeah. Benji, you want to add to that?
Isn't like part of the focus of Mishlei on the consequences and the results?
Yes.
So obviously, it's going to talk about the result and the consequences of a mitzvah.
Right. So I guess the question is going to be is going to hinge on what you take reward or repayment to be. If it's just if you have a Mishlei pasuk that says, I don't know, that those who honor others will be honored. I know that's Pirkei Avos, but that was in my mind. That's like a very Mishleic way of stating the consequence. But saying like you'll be rewarded or you'll be repaid, that's a little bit less Mishleic. And if you're talking about like reward in the world to come, that's like a different kind of reward than what Mishlei like will often highlight. So I think that that's another, again, I'm not criticizing your question, David, but like that's another like a strike against the question of like that this question is not so pashut. It's not so simple that it should be that it should be asked in that way, but it's still a valid question. Okay, Isaiah David Duo.
Yeah, we both have a question, so it's
Okay.
2 for 1. So my question is, what is the definition of mitzvah in this context? And kind of
Yes.
like, is it
That.
is it Taryag kind of like or Torah mitzvah, or is it just a general command?
Okay, what type of mitzvah are we talking about? Sorry, are we talking about? Is this a Torah mitzvah or just a general? Sorry, actually, let's put it this way: is this a Torah mitzvah, a Mishlei mitzvah, or a general command? And I say Mishlei mitzvah because throughout Mishlei, he is giving his, so many of the first 9 chapters are like he's telling his son to do things and not do other things. So like in the context of Mishlei, like maybe it's talking about an injunction from your father, or from Shlomo, your surrogate father. Yeah, right. That's a great question.
Yeah. Okay. And then also, okay, the difference between first half and second half. First half says Yechavel lo, right, seemingly particular to this thing, versus Hu Yeshulam is just an overall, like a general, getting this positive.
Yeah.
So is the first half meant to be specific to this particular item that we're discussing, and is the second half meant to be general? And if not, well, either if yes or if not, why is that?
Okay, well, Yichavel lo, I just want to make sure I understand your question. Yichavel lo means that he will be injured by it. So meaning that the cause of the harm is the davar. And
Yeah, that particular
that's
davar.
what you're asking about? Okay. Yeah. So let's ask that, which is the first half specifies that he will be injured by the davar itself, whereas the second half promises reward without identifying the source. Okay, what is the this is I'm segueing to a general question, which is what is the cause and effect mechanism of the reward? Okay, I see Mango didn't have a question. That's too bad. Yeah, Alex.
What exactly are the opposites? Like, is the first half and the second half supposed to be contrasting each other, and what exactly is being contrasted?
Okay, good. So we did have that, but I didn't put the question in the proper place. I usually put that one towards the end. So are these two halves opposites? Okay. Isaiah, David, Mango trio.
Okay. Just
You
again,
have a question.
he does have a question.
Yeah.
Okay. He was asking that particularly to the that he'll be injured by it. Does it need to be it, or could it just be that generally not listening to things and this was like the original stem, but it's not necessarily the mechanism that made this person get injured?
So I think you would need another way to read low. You know?
Okay. Yeah.
So if you have another way to low, then I would accept that, and then I would say the question's a good question. But if not, then I think we have to read it this way.
Okay, if not, then fine. Okay.
Okay. Alex, did you have another question, or that's left over from before?
Oh, leftover from before.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, Ariel.
Yeah, what's the subject of the pasuk?
Okay. So yeah, what is the subject of the pasuk? And by that, Ariel means like, what topic is this pasuk about? Yeah, Ayala.
I don't think we asked this yet, but what does Yeshulam mean specifically?
Yeah, you're right. What does Yeshulam mean? And you know what? I think what I want to do is go like this. What does Yeshulam mean, and how does it come about? And we'll leave this question about rewarded, like the problem with rewarded, on its own. Yeah, Ariel.
Yeah, and who's the audience?
Okay, yeah. Who is the intended audience of this pasuk? And I don't think we need to separately ask what the practical ramification is, because it seems like once we answer these questions, it'll have that. Okay, there's one more question that that it's funny. My dad said when he was talking about the reward thing, he was talking about doing a mitzvah. So the question I have is like, it doesn't say doing a mitzvah. You know what? So you could put this as part of question number 8, but I'm going to say like, why focus on the fear and revere of a mitzvah rather than the doing of a mitzvah? Okay, like, does this imply doing plus, or is this just a benefit of the fear and reverence itself? Yeah, Benji.
I have a few questions. One is, why does it not give like characters like Russia or Chacham?
Okay, yeah. That actually I'm gonna tack on to who's the intended audience of this pasuk, and you know, especially given the fact that no Mishleic archetypes are mentioned. Yeah.
And then also like shot wise, what for if there's a lamed required like in the baz lidavar, why is
Yeah.
that not required for the mitzvah?
Yeah. I think this is, again, I just have very strong grammatical intuitions, which I can't explain because I don't know grammar. But I don't think you say, I think the word yireh is used with the direct subject or object. I don't think you say, like, you say es Hashem Elokacha tira, not not Yoreh Lashem, you know? So I just don't think you have the lamed there. I think that's just a grammatical thing. So I don't
So
know.
wait, you're saying that the mitzvah is a specific or is general?
I'm saying that I thought you were saying why is there no lamed by oops sorry, why is there no lamed in front of mitzvah? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, that's what I was asking.
Yeah, so I'm saying I don't think this grammatical form is ever used that I've seen. I don't think you say Yoreh le something.
Mhm.
I think you say Yoreh and then you say the thing.
Mhm.
But I can't explain why.
Mhm.
If
And
you
then
find one,
also
then my theory's gone. But yeah.
is chaval also translated as waste, or is that just modern
I
Hebrew?
think that's modern Hebrew. I actually, I did have open the BDB translation, which I would just want to consult one more time. So the BDB translation says bind or pledge is one meaning, act ruinously or corruptly is another one, and ruin and destruction. My assumption, the way that Israelis use it, is that it is like coming from that meaning of like it's such a like it's ruined or it's like it's something like that. So I that's why I'm gonna go ahead and assume for now. Yeah. Okay. So I think we got the main questions here. Let me copy and paste this into the chat. All right. How many halls is it going to take? We get an over under? Oh, hold on. You think two?
Two.
All right. I think it's going to be three. All right. So let's start off with 1 through 8. Oh, you might be right. If you did 1 through 8, then it'll probably be able to do 9 through 14. Yep, you're right. Okay, I got to change all the numbers, otherwise it's going to bother me. 9. Actually, it's not going to bother me from seeing it. It's going to bother me that it exists. Because I'm not going to see the chat. But I do know about existences. 13 and 14. Okay, there we go. Okay, so now we will take our traditional thinking minute to think. And then we will find out the ideas. Well, while you think, I'm going to go get my water that I left in the other room. Okay, Isaiah, you're up.
Okay, so you're gonna enjoy my example in this.
Okay.
So so I'm thinking of this as like the dover is kind of like a new thing. So if
Yeah.
you're scornful of like a new thing or something that is new into you,
Yeah.
you kind of avoid thinking about it or like working with it or understanding it, then the lack of having that knowledge is going to end up harming you. Maybe you'll be like behind other people or something like that.
Oh, I know what example you're talking. Yeah.
The example is AI. So you have
Yeah.
to, so if you are afraid of AI, so then you're going to end up behind the people who are using it. The other half is the mitzvah. You actually really helped me pull this idea together. It's a Mishlei mitzvah. So someone who
Oh.
is who is who is a actually it's I'm thinking of it as someone who like in general like approaches things Mishleically, like a Yare mitzvah. So that person he won't just scorn this new object. He'll like actually like consider it and think of the Mishleic ways that he can use it, and so he'll be rewarded because he'll be able to use it.
Okay, so let me see. The second half is talking about a Mishleic mitzvah. And to just explain again how you're taking Ureh.
He fears the general concept of Mishlei mitzvos, like
Yeah.
being practical.
Okay. Okay. To fear or revere means that is so it's really is the opposite of the scorn, right? Which means like he holds it in such a high regard that he like thinks about it and acts based on it, even when the situation isn't present. I'm just gonna say like like I think that's true to your idea, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And as a result, he'll be rewarded for that vigilance. Okay, so happens to be that the Rabag starts off saying your idea, and then he sharply deviates and says something that is very anti-Rabag. Okay, so I'm going to read the Rabag just because it's the closest thing that I've seen to what you're saying, and I don't know what to make about this anti-Rabag thing, but I'll explain why it's anti-Rabag. So the Rabag says like this: Mishu baz l'davar ra, someone who's scornful of a harmful matter, shehu nachon lavo alav, that is fit to befall him, meaning something that is like that there's a probability that it'll befall him. I'll just say that, even though it's not a good English translation. Something about a matter that probabilistically can befall him, and doesn't strive to take counsel about it, behold, he will be harmed and wounded on account of it. For this reason, it is not proper for a person to make light of anything and to be lazy to take counsel about it. Because that's exactly what you're saying, right? It's like, you are just not thinking about something. You're like, oh, that can't happen to me, and then you just don't think about it, or you downplay it. So you're gonna get injured by it. But then he says like this: however, a person who fears the mitzvos of Hashem, to keep them in his heart and to do them, he alone will stand in peace, even though he scorns the things that are subject to befall him, because he trusts in Hashem. Okay, now the reason why this is anti-Rabag is, Rabag's commentary on Tanakh is structured typically in 3 parts, especially his Chumash commentary, that he goes through lessons in mitzvos, lessons in midos, which extends to like all decision making, and then lessons in Deos, which is ideas about God. And so many of his lessons about midos are about this exact thing, that even though such and such a tzaddik was on a very high level, then that tzaddik, knew that something bad could happen, and they took every precaution against it, But this second half of the Rabag makes it sound like he's saying, like, oh, if you keep mitzvos, then you can just trust in Hashem and like rely on that, So I don't know what to make of this Rabag. It's very like, I don't just mean it goes against the spirit of the Rabag. I mean I can name you like many citations of Rabag where he like does not say this. So I don't know what to make of that. Yeah, Ariel?
Yeah, it's interesting because I was kind of thinking somewhat similar to the Rabag.
Yeah.
Not exactly though. I don't know if I should say now.
Yeah,
but,
sure.
Because
Yeah.
I was thinking that, for like the second half of the pasuk, the mitzvos are just, it's like the system of mitzvos. Like you fear the system of the mitzvos,
Yeah.
right? And assuming the mitzvos are objective and like it's gonna benefit society or in a corporation or in any given environment, then you really have nothing to fear. You're gonna be like at ease with living.
Oh, okay. So
You know what I
that's
mean?
okay.
So
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if that's what the Rabag is trying to say, because you could say that if you are in line with God's system and God's mitzvahs, then you're gonna have a good lifestyle.
Okay. All right. So
Bottom
I'll
line.
tell you what I like about that. I don't think that, I mean, okay, let me. Okay. I like your idea. Okay. I don't know if that is cramming it into the Rabag or not, but let me just flesh out your
Oh
idea.
yeah, I'm definitely cramming it
Okay,
in.
that's fine. As long as you know what you're doing, Okay, so the second half is hold on a second. Second half is saying that is talking about someone who fears the entire system of mitzvos, which, by the way, I'm gonna tell you now and show you later. That's the Meiri's third interpretation of mitzvah. That mitzvah is not a particular mitzvah; it's the entire system of mitzvos. Yeah.
I'm very glad that you just said it, because that was my only question on this idea.
Okay, no, it's very good. Yeah, good. So it's always nice to have support from the Mefarshim here. So the Meiri says it's about the whole system of mitzvos, but I can't show it to you now because his third interpretation builds on his second one. I don't want to spoil that, so we could do that later. It's talking about someone who fears the entire system of mitzvos, and such a person will, and I think this is the part that's good, will be at peace. Okay, I think if you read the second half, Yeshulam is will like, attain shalom. So then that works out. I think the reason why it's somewhat of a stretch is the Ralbag seems to be making like Yishulam to be the direct opposite of being harmed. And he even said it, like the way he expressed it is he says, Baz l'davar rash hu nachon lavo alav. Someone who just scorns a bad thing that could befall you, blah, 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 blah. And then the other person is Yamod Beshalom im heos baz l'devarim hanachonim lavo alav. That he will be in shalom even when he scorns the things that will fall upon him, that will be fallen. So it sounds like he is saying be at peace, but he's saying like even if you scorn, if you like don't take practical precautions, and truthfully, like that goes against. I just brought this up in Pirkei Avos here last on Thursday. The pasuk that we did on Tisha B'av in Mishlei of hold on, Ashrei Adam Mafachei Tamid, Ashrei Adam Mafachei Tamid, or Ashrei Ish. I think it's Adam. Who remembers Tisha B'av? Yeah, Mishlei 28:14. Ashrei Adam Mafachei Tamid u'machshei libo yipol bara. Happy / praiseworthy is the one who fears constantly. The one who hardens his heart will fall into harm. Like that's not talking only about someone who doesn't fear mitzvos. That's like everyone should do this, and if you don't take precautions against things that can happen, to me that's hardening your heart. So Ariel, I like your idea a lot, and it has support from Mefarshim enough to be grounded in it. It's just it doesn't save the Ralbag.
Yeah, it's fine. So what's the first half of the idea? I'm trying to think about that right now.
No, I think the first half works out with the Ralbag.
No. Independently of the Ralbag. My idea.
You mean what would you have for the first half?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have an approach?
No, I'm just asking.
Yeah. Right. So what I would say is that if we're going to take these as direct opposites, then I would say that the first half. I'm going to go ahead and write this out of order. First half is talking. You're going to like this about someone who scorns the Devar Hashem. Okay, the word of Hashem, which is all the mitzvos. Okay, will be injured. Okay, by that scorning. Okay, in other words, it's not. Okay, let me think about it this way. Okay, the Isaiah's idea focuses on if you scorn a particular thing, then you will run the risk of being injured by that thing. But the mitzvos are a system that is designed to guide you towards the good in life in general and keep you away from the ra. So if you are scorning the system of mitzvos, it's gonna not only are you gonna like make the mistake that Isaiah is talking about of like doing things and getting consequences, but you're going to like not heed the general bad values and pitfalls that the mitzvahs are trying to keep you away from. Like, let's take for example, like taiva, like lust and desire, like instinctual desire. So mitzvahs are keeping you away from that. So if you scorn the mitzvah system, you're just not going to be aware of how ensnaring giving into your instinctual desires can be. Or let's say avodah zarah, Torah is trying to keep you away from avodah zarah, which we're defining as again, best definition I've ever heard is Rabbi Chait's definition of treating the products of your psyche as a reality, and if you are scorning like the Torah's attitude towards avodah zarah, you will fall into superstitious thinking. You'll fall into magical thinking. You'll fall into like having that like self-centered view that an avodah zarah has. So I think that the injury is going to come from the scorning, in addition to coming from the individual mitzvos. So I think that works out really well.
Meaning if you're ignoring the the words of the Torah or like the ideas of it, then like you're not gonna be able to recognize when that affects you.
Yeah, and I'm saying I'm making the same move that you're making. I'm saying that Devar Hashem refers to i.e. The entire system of mitzvos and Torah values. The whole package.
Well, so what? Yeah. So my only question is.
Oh, sorry. No, I can go one step further. Okay, is that it is, the mitzvah is sorry. The pasuk is really talking about. See, I think the verbally the chiddush of the pasuk, the insight is from the fact that we're not talking about doing averos and keeping mitzvos. We're talking about scorning the word of Hashem and fearing the word of Hashem, you know? So I think I would go so far as to say that if you keep all of halacha, but you scorn the word of Hashem, like you view halacha as like this burdensome thing that like, oh, this is just getting in the way of me like having the real good, you will fall into harm, even if you're keeping all the mitzvahs, you know? Like those are the people that the Ramban criticizes, where like, you know, they keep all of kashrus, but they like pig out on food, or like they scrupulously like avoid saying lashon hara about Jews, but they like, you know, speak lashon hara about non-Jews. Or like, you know, the Ramban points out, he says that, you know, there's no actual halachic violation in indulging in like you know, wine, you know, but it, you know, but and so a person will say, oh, I can indulge in wine, I'm gonna go and do that, you know. So like it's the person who is scorning the values of Torah. Even if they keep the mitzvahs of Torah, the scorn will lead to you being harmed. And on the flip side is one who reveres the mitzvah system, even if you don't keep it perfectly, you know, but let's say you're trying to keep the mitzvah system, the reverence itself will lead you to have like this type of shalom, you know.
So so just practically speaking, like I feel like like I don't think I scorn mitzvahs. So I'm just wondering, just practically speaking, like how would you know or be wary of falling into this trap? Like, or like what are the parameters? Like you
Right.
give an example which is very clear and obvious what it would mean, but like I
Yeah.
just feel like for us,
Yeah.
like we don't think of ourselves consciously, at least doing that. So I'm just
Right.
wondering, what's the takeaway on that?
Yeah, sure. Hold on a second. Keep them perfectly. So yeah, so I think like many areas in Mishlei, this is subject to degree, you know. So like let's say like I think this could apply, you know, all of Torah is an entire system, and the system has values, but there are like sub values, you know, like within, let's say like, okay, let's take okay, the Torah in general is promoting kedusha, okay, you know, and for our purposes, we'll translate kedusha as, you know, as transcending your animalistic desires, which means rising above them and not letting them dictate your life. Okay, so let's say a person is totally fine when it comes to exercising kedusha in all areas, except let's say when it comes to eating, they just can't stand kashrus, you know. So they begrudgingly keep it, but they think it's stupid. They think it's like some sort of like, you know, like outdated like, you know, value system or whatever. I'm saying that attitude is going to seep into the way that they relate to desires and pleasures in general. Like that type of person really holds that pleasure is the greatest good. Like and if they're not seeing any consequences to viewing pleasure as the greatest good, then they are going to injure themselves, you know, even if they're keeping halacha. So like I think the to answer your question about how do you diagnose this in yourself, I mean, first level is see what your attitude is towards mitzvos. Like I know which mitzvos I like and which mitzvos I dislike, you know. So being aware is the first step. Second step is being aware that disliking the mitzvos, on the one hand, you have to be honest with yourself. On the other hand, you can't embrace the dislike as a positive value, you know. Like there are people who will take whatever attitude that they have about a given mitzvah, and they'll just assume that attitude like is primary, and they won't like attempt to like, you know, examine it or undo it, or like figure out like, is there another way of looking at this mitzvah in a way where like I am correcting my mistake? Like they'll just like run with it, you know. Like I'll give an example without getting into too much controversy. You know, there are people who have modern progressive Western values that look at like, you know, at certain aspects of the Torah as like, you know, sexist, or like look at it as like, you know, anti whatever, like anti this or anti that. And they'll just assume that their own view is correct and that the Torah is outdated, and they'll just be like, you know, they'll just sit with the scorn and like, and not view anything as wrong with the scorn. They won't say like, well, how do I reconcile like my feelings and thoughts about, you know, modern values with the Torah? Like maybe I should investigate. Maybe I'm understanding the Torah wrong. You know, like they won't investigate it. And then the third step is to actually investigate it. So just to outline again, step one is be aware of your own feelings. Two is be honest with your feelings, but realize that like, you know, kilo davar reik hu mikem. You know, that's what the pasuk says in Devarim, and Chazal say, im imatasa reik mikemhu. If you find the Torah to be empty, then assume that the emptiness comes from you, and realize that I have to like assume that this is imperfection in me. And then the third step is to actually work on it, work on your own emotions and personality, work on gaining more knowledge of Torah, and like actually like struggle with it. That's the way out.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you. No, yeah, I definitely understand what you're saying. I feel like this by long talk, man. 100%.
Okay, yeah, no, so this is a perfect example, right? So long tachnun, you don't like long tachnun, so what do you do? So first of all, accepting that fact, which I don't think you have a hard time accepting, right? Is second thing is to ask yourself, like, is this really just too long? Or am I like, is there something wrong with me and the way I'm relating to it? Or am I not understanding what Tachnun is? For example, like I use this example a lot. In the opening parak of the Shulchan Aruch, I'll show it to you so you can believe me. And I'm not poskening here, but like this is an open halacha. Oops, sorry, I automatically went to the wrong one. Okay, Shulchan Aruch says. Third halacha, I think. No, fourth halacha. Tov me'at tachanunim bekavana meharbos below kavana. Better a little bit of tachanunim with kavana than lots without kavana. Okay, so like that is a principle in halacha, and like maybe you should modify your practice, and or look in or ask a shaila about that, Then the next level is like actually like go through the sugi of tachanun. I have locked and loaded what's probably going to be like a 5 or 6 part series on Tachanun, but I just haven't found the opportunity to give it yet. So like understanding what Tachanun is, and like that'll help. So yeah, this is like this is like Torah therapy. Like you have to like engage in that type of self-examination, but also like learning about like the Torah, and it's good. Okay, we got 2 good ideas now. All right, next is my dad, who's been waiting patiently.
Okay. So I'm focusing on the word debar and thing.
Yeah.
And say this is someone who's scornful of even a small thing in Torah practice and living by the commandments.
Right.
And they're saying, this is someone who, yes, I daven, I keep a kosher home, I do, but just this one little thing, it's not that important.
Right.
And even though you feel that the smallest detail is not important, it will still have consequences.
Exactly.
The remedy for that is you revere the entire system.
Okay, that's really, really good. Okay, good. So this is what I was thinking about when I said that this connects to the Pirkei Avos shiur, which is that this is talking about someone who scorns even the smallest element of Torah. Okay, and it's teaching him that he needs that even that
Transgression.
Yeah, small transgression will have consequences. The remedy is to revere the entire system, and to realize that the particular is part of the package deal. And again, going back to what I was saying to Ariel a while ago, it's only human to like to have negative feelings towards parts of the halacha. Like everyone is challenged by different things in halacha. The question though is, what are you doing with those feelings? Like, are you moving forward and like trying to improve, or are you just like accepting it? So the way this connects to Pirkei Avos is this actually connects to the last 2 Pirkei Avos shiurim that I've given. So 4.2 says. Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi says, be careful. No, sorry. Oh, yeah. Okay. Actually, yeah. That's 11 also. So Pirkei Avos 2.1 says, Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi says, heavy zahir b'mitzvah kala kavachamura. You should be careful with a light mitzvah like a severe one. She'ena tayudei matan scorned mitzvos. Because you don't know the reward distribution for mitzvos. V'hevi machashiv hefsed mitzvah keneged schara u'schara vera keneged hefseda. You should calculate the loss of a mitzvah against its reward, and the reward of an avera against its loss. Which again, I don't think they teach this in Jewish schools, But like you obviously have to keep mitzvahs no matter what, but you should do a cost benefit analysis of mitzvos and realize that, yeah, mitzvos have losses. Like you have to give up on pleasures and you have to do painful things, but like there's rewards, and averos give you pleasures, and you should like realize that, but like there are consequences. But then the thing I give shiur on was Ben Azai's statement in 4:2. You should run, have you rats la mitzvah kala kavachimor, you should run to a light mitzvah like a severe mitzvah, uboreach min ha'avera, and run away from avera, from transgression. Should mitzvah gureres mitzvah, gureres avera, because one mitzvah leads to another, and one avera leads to another. Sheschar mitzvah mitzvah, uschar avera avera, because the reward of a mitzvah is another mitzvah, and the reward of an avera is another avera. I'm not going to go in and summarize the whole shiur, but we had 2 shiurim on that, I think. And then there's another one, which is Avos 4:3. Oh, actually, no, this has not come up. No one's brought this up yet. I'm jumping the gun. Okay, yeah, but that's a good idea also. Okay, good. So now we got 3 good ideas. All right, anyone else have any approaches? Mishlei's flowing tonight. Okay, if not, I mean, you could always jump in later. We have 3 ideas from the Meiri. Okay, so, and I translated all these. Okay, Meiri idea number 1 says, I'm going to read it in Hebrew in case I don't like my English. Lefi das hamoni. So according to, I've never seen him use this phrase before, das hamoni, but from context, I think he's saying it's a mundane view, or maybe a secular view. You'll see what he means. Hine yura'e hine hena milas mitzvah al kol tochachas. He says, it seems like the word mitzvah here refers to all rebuke. Hein sivui mitzad adon Moshe, whether a command from a master or a person in power. Hein tochachas v'azhara mitzad molidav, umalamdav, o chachamav, o zakenav. Or it is a rebuke and a warning from one's parents or teachers, wise men or elders. V'amar, Shlomo is telling you, shemishu baz ledavar etza, lo derech tochachas ve'etza, someone who scorns a statement of advice that's given to him by way of rebuke and counsel. B'kol shekain im yavuz lemitzvas adon Moshe, and all the more so if you scorn a commandment that's given to you by someone in power, below yahush me'avor alav, and you don't worry about transgressing it. Oshi is yash milakaima, or you basically like just give up, give up on fulfilling it. I mean, you just like neglect fulfilling it. I'm going to say neglect fulfilling it. Yechabelo, he'll be wounded. Kolomar yishachek v'yinazik ba'avur hadavrahu. He will be diminished and harmed because of that thing. V'yirei mitzvah hu yishulam. Someone who fears mitzvah will be yishulam. Yamod b'shalom u'v'shava. He will stand. He will be in a state of peace and tranquility. V'hu k'inyan hayired es davar Hashem heinis v'gomer. He quotes from Shemos when it says, by the plague of Barad, of hail, those who feared the word of Hashem among the servants of Paro made their servants and livestock flee into the houses, and he who did not take Hashem's word to heart left his servants and livestock in the field. Now, I don't know why he chooses that pasuk. I mean, obviously because it talks about fearing the word of Hashem, but I think it's an interesting analogy that you got to imagine being in Egypt, okay? And 6 of the plagues have already happened, okay? And you hear Moshe warn Paro that there's going to be a plague of hail, right? That was one where he warned him, right? Yeah, he definitely warned him on that one. And it says that the Egyptians who feared the word of Hashem took all of their livestock in, right? And the ones who didn't suffered the destruction. So I think one thing you see from the Meiri, again, I don't know if this is its intent, but you should relate to a halacha in the same way as that, because a halacha is the word of Hashem, just like Hashem saying, I'm going to bring hail and destroy Egypt, you know? Or like, I don't know if anyone else does this. I don't know if anyone else gets into YouTube rabbit holes of watching tsunami videos. I sometimes that happens to me, or like natural disaster videos. But like with tsunami videos, you know, what happens when there's a tidal wave is all of the water gets sucked out to sea. So like it uncovers a huge amount of like dry land. And you see these people walk out onto the dry land and like they're standing near the shore, and like you just want to yell at these people through the computer screen, like, you're an idiot. Like this is God's way of telling you, get away from the ocean, because there's gonna be a tidal wave, you know, or a tsunami or whatever. So, you know, violating halacha is the same thing. Now the consequences might not be as swift, but they are as certain, you know. So I think it's a good analogy. And then he says, included in this message is that he shouldn't scorn any person, for there's no person without their moment, as we explained in Pirkei Avos 4:3. So this is the Pirkei Avos Mishnah that we did last week in my Pirkei Avos shiur. And I'm not going to delve into the idea, but I just want to read the Meiri because he referred to himself there. And it's not very long. The Meiri says, So the Mishnah says, then Azai says, Al tihi baz l'chol adam v'al tihi mafli l'chol davar. Don't be scornful of any person, and don't be dismissive of anything. She'ein lecha adam she'ein lo shav, ein lecha davar she'ein lo makam. There's no person without his moment, and there's no thing without its place. Meiri says, do not disdain any person, meaning, don't disdain the hatred of even the lowest. Sorry, the hatred of even the lowest of the low should not be considered insignificant to you. For there's no person who does not have a moment that may stand for him this time to harm you or to benefit you. And this is what it says in the tractate Derech Eretz Rabbah, chapter 5. Every person should be in your eyes as bandits, but you should honor them like Ramon Gamliel. Likewise, do not be dismissive of anything means that when you hear something that frightens you in any matter, do not distance it from your intellect, meaning you should not disdain it, but rather be cautious about the matter and strive to save yourself from it, for there's nothing that does not have its place at times. And the wise already said, and he refers us back to our pasuk in Mishlei. So it seems like okay, so my question is like this. Okay, given, and I'm going to copy and paste this into the Mishlei document. Given what the Meiri says here, this is very similar to what Isaiah said. Okay. Why did I change the font? I don't know why. This is very similar to what Isaiah said. Just to review Isaiah's idea. Isaiah's idea was that it's talking about scorning something that you should be heedful of mishleically, and you're going to get injured by it. If you just don't bother to think about something and think about the consequences and think about the benefits, you're going to be left in the dust and it's going to harm you. And then heeding the mishleic mitzvah is good, and it will get you benefit. So the question is the Meiri saying the same thing just in different ways, or do you sense that he's saying something different? You know what? I'm just going to temporarily put both Meiris in English on the same page here. Let's just copy and paste this like that. Yeah. So those are the two Meiris. This is the Meiri on Avos. So my question is the Meiri saying something more than Isaiah or different than Isaiah? Because it certainly includes what Isaiah said. Yeah, Isaiah?
And I think, at least in the beginning of his commentary on Mishlei,
Yeah.
the person's kind of making a bigger mistake than I think in the idea that we said.
Yeah.
Because the person is scorning even a command or advice, which obviously meant to help him in some way.
Right. Okay, yeah. That's I think that is the difference point, okay, which is okay, I want to say it slightly differently, which is the person that the Meiri, according to the Meiri, the person the pasuk is talking about may think things through on his own, but he's reacting to someone telling him advice. So I think it is more of a superego thing of not liking being told what to do, and it is going, so like as I said, it is worse, because this person is actually trying to help him. But it's also, I think, a more narrow problem than what Isaiah is saying. Isaiah's talking about someone who is just or Isaiah was talking about a particular thing anyway, but I guess it's a different problem. In other words, the person in Isaiah's pasuk, in Isaiah's interpretation, is the opposite of a chacham. A chacham is Izi chacham haro es hanolad, who is wise, someone who sees the consequences, and this guy is ignoring consequences. Meiri is talking about someone who's more like the Mishleic Ksiel, the fool who hates rebuke. But this is not just even hating rebuke. This is even hating advice or having a resistance to advice. So I think it is a more localized or acute problem, which could have much worse consequences as well. But I think there's a slight difference. Yeah. Okay. Third idea of the Meiri is, I gotta gray this out because that's gonna confuse me later on. Okay. Second idea of the Meiri, derech nister. Okay. So he says that u'v'derech nister, according to the esoteric way of learning this pasuk, nearly shiramas b'milas mitzvah al mitzvos haTorah. Okay, he's referring to the mitzvahs of the Torah, and for some reason I got a kick out of this. He's like, I want to say that the super secret esoteric idea is this is talking about mitzvos, but so it's just a funny derech nister. Yeah.
I say something about that. I think it's kind of a raya for like our approach to Mishlei actually,
Yeah,
because
you're
like
right.
he's not assuming that mitzvahs like the Torah. He's saying
Right.
mitzvah obviously is
That's a great point.
more
Right,
practical.
that is a great point. Nice. Okay, so he says it's mitzvahs of the Torah. Klomer mi shetiye achas. Now this is going to be similar to what my dad said, I think. Oh, sorry, no, it's not. It's not. But this is going to be a really okay. This is a beautiful Meiri. Now, when I say beautiful, there's every Meiri is beautiful Meiri. This is a poetically beautiful Meiri. Okay, in my opinion. Klomer mi shetiye achas mina mitzvos kala beinav. It says that one should not let any of the mitzvos be unimportant in his eyes. V'lo yichush yachush l'kuma, and such that he's not worried about fulfilling it. In other words, don't let any mitzvahs fall by the wayside because you just don't care enough about them. Okay, because if you do that, yichabelo, he will be wounded. Imitzad onesh l'fi darchei hadas, whether as a punishment according to the ways of the religion. Now I don't know if he means by that punishments from based in, or if he means according to the ways that the Torah says you're going to be punished. But then here's the key point. Or what's the real consequence is not understanding the insight derived from the mitzvah. Okay, shehu ulai davar gadol, which maybe is something very big. Okay, he'll give an example. V'yirei mitzvahu yishulam. One who fears a mitzvah will be at peace. Yamod below mavucha. It means you will not be in a state of perplexity. Okay, and this is using mavucha like more nevuchim, meaning you won't be in a state of philosophical perplexity or doubt. Why? Because he will understand the intended idea of the mitzvah. For example, ulai zechiras yom hashabbos b'kedushas hayom. So maybe the mitzvah of remembering Shabbos, when you say Kiddush, which is alluded to in the pasuk, remember the Shabbos day, maybe that mitzvah is unimportant because you're already keeping Shabbos. So we're talking about a person who keeps Shabbos and he just doesn't pay attention to Kiddush. Okay. Okay, so hold on a second here. I just lost my place. Yeah. So what's going to happen? V'hine hanimshach mimenu hu piusum emunas hachidush. But the idea that you get from Kiddush is publicizing the belief in the creation out of the universe from nothing. B'zachor ki sheishish yamim asa Hashem es hashemayim v'ha'aretz v'yanach b'yom hashvi. U'b'bitulo yisyayish mizeh gamkein. So maybe by failing to fulfill this mitzvah, then by what, how did I translate it? Ubibitulo, yeah. When you fail to fulfill the mitzvah of Kiddush, you will. I didn't translate this way. You won't have any hope of gaining this insight either. V'lo yashkia ha'amuna belibo, and that belief in the creation of the world will not sink into his heart. V'yishar poseach, and he will be left in a state of wavering philosophically. Okay, he'll give one more example. Actually, I want to talk about my own example from this. So, the Rambam writes. So, okay, for us, we're living in a world where it's clear that the universe has a beginning because science holds that the universe has a beginning. So for us, it's not like Kiddush is really, as revolutionary as it was back when people believed that the universe was eternal. Okay, however, Rambam in the Moreh Nevuchim says that the mitzvah of fasting, okay, and the mitzvah of doing vidui, of confession, and the mitzvah of tshuva, and all of these mitzvahs are there to reinforce the reality of reward and punishment, and the fact that bad things happen to us because of our averos, okay, and the fact that everything operates in accordance with perfect lawfulness. So there are people who, I'm not criticizing these people. I'm just saying there were people whose faith in God was shaken by the events of October 7th. Okay, because they felt like they never lived through anything that was that they felt was unjust or some horrendous thing, and they have genuine philosophical perplexities. Okay, now I guarantee you that people who, let's say, didn't fast on Asara B'Teves, or who fasted but spent all their fast day watching movies, I guarantee you that those people are not making the connection between the way they relate to those mitzvos and their philosophical conundrums that they have about God when bad events happen, But that's exactly what the Meiri is saying. He's saying that mitzvos are designed to instill certain ideas, and you have to keep the mitzvos and think into those ideas because that's how you entrench the ideas in the way they view reality. So if you are making light of any mitzvah, even if you're keeping the mitzvah, you might be missing out on these valuable insights that shape the way that you view reality, and that could lead to real philosophical problems that you think are problems intellectually, but really they're problems that are stemming from lack of a reality of the idea that is like instilled within you from keeping the mitzvahs. That's a huge idea about how mitzvahs work. You know, he gives another example. He says, "V'kiyotzu b'davar menias sipur hahagada b'leilei Pesach," which, by the way, I don't know if this was a pun. I've never seen the Meiri make a pun before, but he says, "V'lo yashkia ha'emuna b'libo v'yishar poseach." You will be poseach means like wavering. V'kiyotzu b'davar menias sipur hahagada b'leilei Pesach. You know. So you know, if it's a pun, then like you gotta like pat the Meiri on the back, like, oh, good job, Meiri. You're being like the Ibn Ezra who's like always making all these jokes, but you know, and if it was unintentional, then like I that's a different kind of like you know, satisfaction. Okay. I gotta find some academic who researches like puns in Provence in the 1300s and see if like they can give me data on whether the Meiri was a punster. Okay, so he says same thing is if you refrain from telling the story through the Haggadah on the nights of Pesach. Let's say that mitzvah of Haggadah is light in your eyes. The belief that is entrenched from that mitzvah is belief in God's omnipotence, in his ability to do miracles and change nature. Okay, so there's another unfortunately real example. When I teach high school, I think the sentence, this sounds like an exaggeration, I think the sentence that breaks my heart the most is when we get close to Pesach, and we start preparing for it, and there's always a student who says, I hate Pesach. And that just makes me super sad because to me, I go back and forth whether Pesach or Rosh Hashanah is my favorite holiday. And when I ask them why they hate Pesach, they always say one of two things. Either their family is like neurotic crazy about chametz, you know, and like it's a traumatic event, or they say their Seder is just this mindless recitation of the Haggadah, or just all we do is just like rush through it, or all we do is just sing, and I hate singing. But they're not going into hanimshach mimenu. They're not going into the insights that you get from the discussion of God's role in history and what that means for us in terms of our conviction in God's existence. And you know, and like we, you know, many of us have had the pleasure and privilege of having like great Pesach Sedarim that are transformative. That like Rabbi Yoni Sachs, our Rabbi Sachs, you know, always talked about how all the mitzvahs that remind you of Yetzias Mitzrayim, of the Exodus throughout the year, the way the Torah designed it is you have a fundamental night of insight on the night of Pesach every year, and then that rekindles the memories of of Yetzias Mitzrayim, and then all the mitzvahs that you do that remind you of Yetzias Mitzrayim throughout the rest of the year remind you of that last Pesach, you know, and then you have another one. That's a transformative experience. And so yeah, there are people who don't view God as having a hand in history, but I don't think they associate to mumbling through the Haggadah and realize that if they didn't mumble through the Haggadah, they would have an actual view of God in history that's real to them, you know? So it's just like such a fundamental Meiri here. And he concludes and he says the same is true for many mitzvos. And then he quotes the Mishnah that I quoted. Chazal say, be as careful with the light mitzvah as with a severe mitzvah. And as they said, for the reward of a mitzvah is a mitzvah, which refers to the insight derived from the fulfillment of the mitzvah. And if it is unimportant in his eyes, oh yeah, I think I made a mistake here. In other words, the insight that you get from the mitzvah is the essence of the mitzvah. You know, he gave another example in his commentary on Pirkei Avos of saying the Shema. Shema is a very light mitzvah. You know, it's a mitzvah to say. There's no punishment for not doing it in terms of like kares or anything like that. But it's attached to Yichud Hashem, God's oneness, which is the most important idea, one of the most important ideas in Judaism. You know, so I thought that was just a beautiful Meiri. Okay, and then the last Meiri, which is going the reading that Ariel had, even though it's a different idea, is he says, "V'libo od lefarish davar u'mitzvah al klal mitzvahs." I think one can also explain matter and mitzvah to refer to all mitzvahs collectively. Shmayos v'sichlios. Okay, shmayos means mitzvahs we obey without understanding the reason, and then sichlios are mitzvahs that the rationale is evident. Shebehem shleimus hamidos. And the pasuk is saying that the perfection of midos is attained through mitzvahs. V'amar she'im yivos, I don't know how to say that. Lahem, if you scorn them, v'achshov la'alos l'shleimus hachachma u'lahasagas amitos hapinos hatorios v'hayunios b'zulasam. Let's say you scorn mitzvos, and you think you can perfect your chachma and your philosophy and Torah and your secular philosophy and other areas without doing the mitzvos, then you'll be wounded and you'll stumble. Okay? V'yirei mitzvah hu yishulam, but one who fears mitzvah will be yishulam, klomer yagia mizeh l'shleimus. So he says you'll be perfected. And he says, ubas milas yishulam me'inyan shleimus. The word yishulam comes from the word perfection, milashon v'tishlam kol malacha. Okay, then he gives grammatical proofs. Oh, sorry, I skipped something. Umilanu gadol mishlomo she'amar ani arbev lo asur v'nichshal. Who do we have who's greater than Shlomo, who says, I will increase the number of my wives and I will not deviate, right? So the king is not allowed to have past a certain limit of wives. And Shlomo says, and the reason it says that is it says, don't have too many wives or else, you'll deviate. And Shlomo says, I won't deviate. And he ended up deviating, and that cost, that basically, I always ask my students, if you could blame the destruction of the first Beis Mikdash on one person, who would it be? And I think there's three candidates. Okay, the third one is Menashe, who was the final nail in the coffin, and that was where we got to the point of no return. Second one is Yeravam ben Nevat, who introduced Avodah Zarah into the northern kingdom by building golden calves. But then the first one who you could blame the entire destruction of the Beis Mikdash on is Shlomo, because if he didn't do this, the kingdom wouldn't have split, and then we wouldn't have run into all those other problems, So Shlomo was the wisest one, and he said, like, I don't need this mitzvah. I could just learn Mishlei, But he that wasn't good enough for him. Okay, so those were six really good ideas tonight. Okay, so let's review and call it a night. Okay, so we had Isaiah's idea, which was that Baz Ladavar means that you scorn a Mishleic type of principle. Mishlei, you scorn a thing mishleically, which means you don't think about it in terms of consequences and chachma, and it's going to end up harming you, like AI. And then if you have reverence for it in a mishleic way, that you actually take the time to think about it before it happens, sprinkle in a little bit of stoic premeditatio malorum of like envisioning the bad that could happen, and then taking the Mishlei and like thinking about it practically. So then, you'll get the rewards of benefiting from it, and you'll avoid the harm. And then the Meiri's first idea was like a little bit of a similar to that, but it had to do with ignoring or resisting advice or instruction, and giving into that resistance is going to harm you in the same ways that Isaiah said, but it's like a different route. Okay, then we had Ariel's idea, which is about Yali, you want to add to that?
Yeah, I'm just thinking, can you say for Isaiah's idea, like an alternative explanation for the first half, I guess, is that if someone is scornful of a dover, then I mean you can say injured by it, or maybe to translate it as like he will be pledged to it. And
I
kind
totally
of the
forgot
idea
about
that
translation.
yeah, I've been trying to think about it. I couldn't really come up with anything good, but the
Yeah.
one idea that I maybe had was that maybe it's like once he's already scorning something,
Yeah.
then like he can't really go back on his word. And
Oh, that's
his
interesting.
head, like he won't be able to go back on it. And
Yeah.
I think you could fit that with Isaiah's second half too.
Yeah.
And maybe say that like someone, like just like when he's scoring something, it'll make it like a concrete thing that he can't take back.
Yeah.
Maybe similarly, someone who fears or reveres a command, maybe it would be like in the opposite way, and make it like a concrete thing for the positive. I'm not sure if you can say that, but
No, I like that idea, and I'm glad you reminded me of it. And just to extend it to Isaiah's metaphor, like I look, you have to be realistic and not panic, but like, when people say that AI is going to like take a bunch of people's jobs, like you might literally become indebted to that. Like you might become indebted, if you don't, heed that, then you'll become indebted to that. And I'll give you an example just from Sadigon, because Sadigon did take that translation. I actually did not read all of Sadigon. I just typed him up. He says, okay, Zeh kamo shezilza melech Plishtim b'Yitzchak. So this is like the king of Plishtim scorned Yitzchak. Ve'ache Yosef bo. Okay, that's the example I could relate to, or that I'm most familiar with, is the brothers of Yosef scorned him. Ve'anshe Gilad b'Yiftach. I don't know that story well enough. Ve'ache David bo and the brothers of David scorned him. Kasher amar lo Eliav, ani yadati es zdonecha v'nizkuku kulam l'kulam. Okay, so in other words, like all these people became actually like subjugated to him, because they made light of him. Yeah, and I was suggesting that maybe the second half is cultivating like an opposite mentality of like this could be something that could I could what do you call become if I don't heed this properly, then I might become like subjugated to it in some way, and like taking a heed for that. I mean, a good example of that is Yosef also with Paro, right? Like Yosef really was Yoreh. He feared the famine, and he took all the precautions, and then like that ended up saving everyone. Okay, then we had Ariel's second idea, or Ariel's idea, which is that it's talking about how you relate to the entire system of mitzvos, and that's going to lead to a certain peace in general, because it's a good life, and like you have everything mapped out in terms of how you should relate to stuff, and you have guidance and ideas and guidance and midos, and if you scorn the Devar Hashem, then you're going to be injured by that. And I added that this is talking about the layer above keeping halacha. So even if you keep all of halacha, nevertheless, if you scorn halacha, the word of Hashem, then you'll get consequences. And if you don't perfectly keep halacha, then the reverence will pay off in a way that will reward you. And then my dad's idea is that if you scorn even the smallest element in Torah, it's going to have a consequence. And the answer, the remedy, is to revere the entire system and then keep it as part of the system. Like, that's the problem with picking and choosing, is once you start picking and choosing, it's very easy to just justify like not keeping any halacha that you don't understand or don't relate to, and then the whole thing unravels. And then you have the Meiri's first idea, which is that we talked about that. Meiri's second idea, which is that the ikar reward of a mitzvah is the insight you get from it, and big fundamental ideas can come from small mitzvos. And if you start neglecting or disparaging a mitzvah, you're going to miss out on all the insight. And sometimes that can lead to actual like intellectual, spiritual harm of perplexity, whereas revering the mitzvah and like looking to get all the insight out of it will protect you from that and make you at peace. And then the third idea is about thinking that you can attain perfection intellectually without the mitzvos, or perfection in midos without the mitzvos, but you really can't. Okay, nice haul tonight. It was very good. Okay, and there were a lot of parts we didn't even get through. So if anyone has any other ideas, feel free to post it in the after party chat. And Bli Neder, next week we shall continue. Okay, have a good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank
Have a
you.
good night.
Thank you. Have a good week.
Yeah.